So, hello everybody, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar, Automotive SPICE for Cybersecurity. My name is Holger Höhn. I'm one of the managing directors of Process Fellows, and I will guide you together with our expert, Timo Karasch, to our webinar for this day, where we want to answer the questions we raised in our invitation. And first, I want to start with some organizational stuff. So how do we want to perform this webinar? First of all, please stay muted during the presentation. If you have during the presentation any questions, you can raise those questions using the chat functionality, opening the chat window in Teams and just typing your question. I will select the questions and ask them directly to Timo when the time point fits. We will have some presentation, and afterwards we will have some open discussion. You can still then ask questions via chat like before, but then it's also possible to ask questions via audio. Then please raise your hand and then I will hand over to you and you can ask your question directly. Again, the note, the webinar will be recorded. I think we already mentioned that in our invitation. Okay, before I will hand over to Timo and introduce also Timo, maybe some small information about our company, Process Fellows. I think not everybody is very familiar with us. So who we are, what are we doing? We are a company consisting of experienced process experts. What we want to do is we want to help our customers to understand, express, and manage the complexity of their processes and products. And this we are doing by, for example, performing gap analysis assessment. So first we want to understand what your challenges are. We're performing analysis to see what is the current situation, where are your gaps. And then following that, we will do some consultancy, trying to fill those gaps, to define processes, to redefine processes. And then we will do some consultancy, trying to fill those gaps, to define processes, to redefine processes. And then afterwards, maybe we could also empower your employees by performing some trainings. And you see also the focus of our company is related to processes, to Automotive SPICE, as well as to functional safety according to ISO 26262. And finally, we will also help our customers in their projects by performing coaching. That means helping in the project the people to create the work products, to support them by providing templates and checklists and so on. And at the end, hopefully, your gaps are closed, and then you will have a successful product development. Yeah, so this was really a short introduction because we want to go very fast into the topic of our session today. Some information about our upcoming training dates I want to add here. The next trainings we will perform is in June. We have the Certified Provisional Assessor training, where we have the performance already guaranteed. So if you register for that, you can be sure that the training is also performed. The same is also for the 3-day introduction for Automotive SPICE, which will take place in parallel the first 3 days of this provisional 5-day trainings. Then we offer also in June a Certified Competent Assessor course, 5 days trainings, and another provisional assessor course will take place hopefully in July. This will take place in the US time zone. If you are interested in the complete training list, you will find it on our website. Besides the trainings, we will also have at the moment 2 additional webinars which are planned. So one is about micromanagement in projects, where Horst Kostal will be the speaker, which will take place in the 20th of July in German language. And as well in German language, we will have in September another webinar, which is focusing on mechanical SPICE, so mechanical development today according to SPICE. Speaker will again be Timo Karasch. If you're also interested in those webinars, in German language both, you can register on our website. Okay, so that's just some information. Now, before I hand over to Timo, I just want to introduce him shortly. So Timo Karasch has deep knowledge in automotive SPICE, hardware and mechanical SPICE, as well in functional safety according to 26262, of course, cybersecurity, process improvement, project management. He's a long time in the business. We worked together for many, many years now. More than 15 years he is in this business. He is Automotive SPICE principal assessor and instructor, and therefore he did a lot of assessments all over the world and also a lot of trainings. And he is a member of Intex working groups, and for today, very important, he is also a member of the Intex working group for cybersecurity, which the working group who worked also on this guideline we see today. Also certified Squirrel and many, many other things. And I think that is enough for your introduction, Timo. And so it's now your playground. So I would like to hand over to you. And let's start with our cybersecurity session.
Thank you very much, Holger. Yeah, thank you for the kind introduction. Yeah, welcome everybody to my to our webinar for Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity. So to be honest, I think this is pretty much the first time I invited so many people in my home. So yeah, welcome everybody here in my home. And it's maybe a little bit crowded in here, but I think we will have a funny time here. Okay, so starting with the webinar, first of all, what is it all about? It's about cybersecurity. So the idea of Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity is an VDA yellow print that has been published this year in February by the VDA QMC. The basis for this yellow print was a work from an Intex working group that was already mentioned, an Intex working group for cybersecurity. And we worked on the basis of ISO SAE 21434. I think a lot of you already know the standard. It's the standard for the development in projects for cybersecurity in automotive business, and it will be mandatory in the future to use this standard during development, and it's comparable to what you know already maybe as ISO 26262 in functional safety. And this standard, but as well other standards, they have been the basis to create the idea that for development in cybersecurity, you need typically established processes. You need stable processes to be used, and therefore it's helpful to check first of all the suitability of your existing development processes. And this is why Automotive SPICE comes in place, because Automotive SPICE, you know, based on the ISO 33000, it will help us to identify whether we perform our development processes according to this existing standards, whether there is process improvement, what is the capability of our development processes. And this is brought together now in this yellow print. So it's an add-on for cybersecurity that has been published, including as well rating guidelines with rules and recommendations, as you know, from the blue gold book of the VDA QMC for Automotive SPICE already. The yellow print, it is available for free. So if you're interested afterwards, you can just look it up at vdaqmc.de and download it for free here. It will take some time. So this is quite the usual way for a yellow print to collect now feedback for this yellow print that leads to an update, and then there will be a new official version that can be bought afterwards. So it's a kind of add-on I already mentioned. So what does this mean? So the idea of Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity, it is to enable an evaluation of our cybersecurity relevant development processes. Means we use a lot of processes during development, and in order to be able to work according to those processes, we need to make sure that they are capable to perform the activity as defined here. And this is already the idea of Automotive SPICE. So this means we still need to perform an Automotive SPICE assessment. So typically, according to the defined VDA scope that I'm pretty sure you're already familiar with. This Automotive SPICE assessment, it can be performed either as a separate assessment already, or you can even combine it. So the picture on the bottom of this page shows you a little bit the idea. You have Automotive SPICE on top, defining not only the processes on level 1, already defining a couple of generic processes, practices for the higher levels. And this is already known from the plugin from SPICE for mechanical engineering or from the hardware SPICE. And this is where Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity is located as well as an add-on model. Maybe in the future, even other add-on models will be available here to be used in combination. So what you see here is the idea of Automotive SPICE or cybersecurity is not to perform it as a standalone model. It's an add-on, so it's an extension to the existing Automotive SPICE.
Okay, that means, Timo, that you cannot perform only an Automotive SPICE assessment, I understood, but how does then an Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity assessment look like, or such a combined assessment?
Yes, I can try to share an example. So what's the idea behind? Because I think you already know there are a lot of add-ons available, and if you would perform an assessment for every model that is available, I think you will here need more than a month to perform only interviews in a project, and you have no time for development. So the idea is what you see here is a traditional Automotive SPICE assessment, let's say. I try to divide it into two parts here. First one are the interviews that you perform for project management and for the supporting processes, for example, quality assurance, configuration management, problem resolution. And you have a couple of interviews that you already have to perform for the system and software engineering. So going through all the development processes here. And the idea is now to combine those assessments. This means you put together the interviews for system and software engineering and have additional questions here regarding the security development. You will see when we look in the content that those processes that are defined here in this add-on for cybersecurity, that they can be mapped to the system and software engineering processes. And this means you can save some time in putting those interviews together. In addition, there might be interviews for supporting processes regarding security that will be necessary here. So the idea is that you avoid the repetition of those interviews for the system and software engineering processes. So this is where you can save time typically by putting this together. On the other side, you see it might be necessary to perform those interviews for the sub-processes here in addition. So if you combine it, it might be possible to combine even questions here, but typically you will see there are some extra interviews that will be necessary. But we will see a little bit later in this webinar the idea how this might be even combined for other processes, because it will influence not only the development processes here. But maybe first of all, coming to the idea, or back to the idea and coming to the structure. So how is it structured? And it is familiar to the documents we already know from Automotive SPICE. It consists of two parts. And the first part is the process reference and the assessment model. So putting both together, but for cybersecurity engineering. So a process reference model means we have a couple of processes. They are defined with their name, with their idea, with its purpose, and with the idea of outcomes. But we as well have an assessment model here. This means we have already indicators, the well-known best practices we have in this processes that helps us to evaluate whether this purpose of those processes is performed or not. Based on the definition of the processes, we will see in a minute, we have the second part, and this is an idea of rating guidelines for the level 1 processes we just saw in the first part. So it includes rules, recommendations that you use for the rating. So it's similar to the already known Automotive SPICE guidelines, the Blue Gold Book here. Let's go through 2 parts to give you an idea and maybe even some examples how this is structured. So first of all, starting with your overview of the processes, and if you have a look at the yellow print of cybersecurity, you will see the picture itself. It looks familiar with what you maybe already know from Automotive SPICE. So pretty much the same colored pictures with all the abbreviations and processes that are named here. And in the red boxes, you see new processes. So they are new in cybersecurity. So you see one box in the middle, it's you're beneath software engineering, and maybe it's a little bit tricky because it's beneath and it's presented as a kind of V already, but this does not mean it's really beneath those other processes. It's more across all the development processes that are highlighted on top in the system and software engineering. Here, if you have a look at the details, you can see it already that from time to time, it sounds familiar to the idea of the processes above, talking about cybersecurity requirements elicitation. So you see it's a process more or less about requirements that is familiar to the requirements processes in Automotive SPICE. You see cybersecurity implementation, so everything about the implementation of the requirement itself. And we have verification and validation on the right side, so everything about testing and quality assurance, etc., that needs to be done for verification and validation according to design and requirements here. In addition to those SEC processes, so cybersecurity engineering processes, we have a process on the right side. It's MAN 7. It's cybersecurity risk management. We will have an idea on one of the next pages. What's the idea and what's the difference to the already existing MAN 5 risk management? And on the left side, we have ACQ2 as a new process. It's supplier request and selection. And as well, on one of the next slides, we will have some more information on this. And you see one process that is marked changed. It's the ACQ4 process. It's the supplier monitoring as well. More information on the next pages. Maybe because it's the most tricky part here, let's have a look at the idea of this SEC processes. It's only a webinar, so I think there's not enough time to go through all the processes in detail. I just pick one example for you. And I pick the SEC2 process. It's cybersecurity implementation. You can see here, just shortly, the definition of the best practices. You can see this process has 9 best practices. And when you just read through the best practices here, you will see some best practices that sound familiar to you. And you can as well see that it fits to more than one process. Because if you see the best practice 1, for example, refine the details of the architectural design, you see, look, it's about an architecture process. But it is already generic. So it's about architecture process on system level. It's about architecture process on software level. So it can be used more than once. But you see even other processes. If you, for example, look at base practice 6, refine the details of detailed design, you see it's about a detailed design process. So it's down in the software development as well as develop the software units. This is something we already do during the software development processes typically. And besides those pretty well-known best practices, you see some best practices that we have not in Automotive SPICE. For example, the best practice 3, select cybersecurity controls. You see, it's something very specific, typically coming from the cybersecurity idea here. So you see, it is following the ideas of the definition, as you know from Automotive SPICE. It even tries to use the same words here to be able to see a little bit the dependencies here. And the details, this would be what you then see in the detailed definition of the base practices and in a lot of notes typically. And the idea is that those base practices should be combined now, as I explained previously, with the development processes in an interview.
Okay, so Timo, thank you for this example. How does this now fit to the already existing Automotive SPICE engineering processes? You said they are close to it, they are fitting together. How does it work?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's maybe it's not the right time to go through a complete assessment now, but already you know every assessment will be a little bit different. But to give you maybe an idea of how this works, I just try to give you an example of an interview. You see on the left side the SAC processes or process of SAC2. I only took the first 4 base practices. So the first one, refine the the designs of the architecture, then to allocate the cybersecurity requirements, select the cybersecurity controls, and define the interfaces. And I just pick now one example. And when you pick, for example, the software 2 process, so it's the software architectural design process, then you know the base practice already tells you to develop a software architectural design. So it looks pretty much the same. So you have to refine the existing architecture or to implement it here. And in orange, I'll try to give you an idea of an additional question. This means you try to find out whether it is including the details based on the goals for cybersecurity. You have the goals somewhere, you have the requirements somewhere, and based on this information, you try to address now in your architecture. So what are components that are necessary for cybersecurity? Where is cybersecurity allocated here in the architecture? And this is what you try to discover when you look at the definition of the architecture and the identification of the components already. As well, the second base practice, allocate the cybersecurity requirements. It's pretty much the same. So you already have a base practice that tries to see whether you can allocate the requirements to the identified components. And this means here including the cybersecurity requirements. So typically this is where you do not have an additional effort here during the interview. You just have to focus on this as well. For the third base practice, maybe it's a little bit tricky because cybersecurity controls, it's nothing really known from Automotive SPICE. So this would be a kind of add-on question, really, where you see whether controls have been defined, whether you can see what components are necessary in order to implement those controls. This is what you have to analyze in detail. But the fourth base practice then define the interfaces is now again comparable to what we know already from the process to see or check as well the interfaces of the elements here. What you see as well in this example, that for future assessments for cybersecurity, it will be mandatory to have really knowledge about cybersecurity, because I think you will be able to identify cybersecurity requirements as a trained or certified Automotive SPICE assessor, but really have an idea whether the definition of controls is appropriate or not means you need some extra knowledge here. Enough about the engineering processes here. Let's have a look at the other processes in the cybersecurity standard first. So I already mentioned 2 processes are added here. The first one is the MANTH 7 process. It's cybersecurity risk management. I put down here the purpose. So pretty much the same than you know from Automotive SPICE. One sentence where the authors try to put as much information in one sentence as possible. purpose of cybersecurity risk management process is to identify, prioritize, and analyze risk of damage to relevant stakeholders, as well as monitor and control respective risk treatment options continuously. So I think everybody knows exactly what is the meaning. If not, the idea for those sentences is try to focus on the keywords here. So what is it all about? It's about risk here, pretty much, risk of damage, and here all those risks need to be identified, prioritized, analyzed. So this is already what you know as a kind of risk management. But you see as well, it's as well about risk treatment options, and this is something that is a little bit specific here in the cybersecurity standard, that you need some treatment actions to be defined, to be monitored continuously. And one of the big challenge of cybersecurity will be that there are tasks not only for the development project itself, even tasks after the development phase. And this means this is a process that will typically remain after the project itself, the development work is closed already. And this is a little bit the idea why there is a separated process here to point out a little bit on the specific task that we have in cybersecurity for risk management. And the second process I want to introduce is the ACQ2 process. It's the supplier request and selection. And to be honest, this is something not new for cybersecurity. This was already a gap in the old Automotive SPICE model. I think a lot of you already discovered when you, for example, worked according to functional safety and you check the handling or the management of suppliers, then everybody asks for how do you select your suppliers. You just have the ACQ4 typically, how to monitor them, but the selection itself was not part of the assessment. And this is now an addition here that you have, first of all, to make sure what criteria a supplier need to fulfill when you work according to cybersecurity, then it is mandatory to give this basic requirement to your sub-suppliers as well, because you are responsible to ensure that they are fulfilling those standards as well, that they know about this requirement, and this is why this is part of the selection here. So, but typically it's a process that is already I think known from the idea that you have to define the requirements for the selection and that you have to select your suppliers according to these definitions here. Besides the new process, we have one change process. It's a supplier monitoring process, but to be honest, everything that is changed is one node. And so you see the purpose is pretty much the same than in Automotive SPICE. Maybe you know it already, but you see one changed part is here, the node 1. Its cybersecurity requirements and responsibilities need to be aligned between customer and supplier. So when you already have a sub-supplier and you already have a contract agreement and a negotiation, for example, something like a development interface agreement, then you make sure, okay, what are the requirements for cybersecurity? What are the responsibilities? And can we make sure that we please have an interface here to discuss this? The idea of the add-on for cybersecurity is that the ACQ2 should be performed in here 2 instances, one for Automotive SPICE, one for Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity. So this is recommended. Typically, you know it already, very often you have more than one instance when you have more than one sub-supplier. And typically, when you already have a sub-supplier that works according to cybersecurity, you need to use, let's say, additional questions to see whether all the interfaces, processes, etc. for cybersecurity are managed as well. To be honest, that's it for the processes here in the cybersecurity standard. But besides, I can tell you cybersecurity will have a major impact on all the management and support processes that you know already from Automotive SPICE. We already know that there is a huge interface, but unfortunately, it is not or has not been identified in this add-on yet. maybe in the future, it will be addressed already. But this means at the moment that it's the task of the assessor to see what are maybe additional topics, additional questions during the assessment performance that I need to add to cover the cybersecurity aspects here as well. So this is an additional activity for the assessors.
Yeah, so Timo, you said also in the beginning you have to reassess supporting processes. So what are the additional questions, and what could you give us some examples here?
I can try to give an example. Okay, to be honest, it's pretty tricky to give really a complete example because, Automotive SPICE, it depends really on the situation of the project, on the complexity and the tasks that you really have to perform for cybersecurity when you, for example, are a sub-supplier already. So, but maybe to give you an idea what this means is I just pick one of these management and support processes. I just pick the MAN 3 process here with its again, only the first base practices here. You pretty sure know it already. You have to define the scope of work, the project life cycle, evaluate feasibility, define the activities, and so on. So all the project management activities. Pretty sure when you manage a project, you as well have to manage the cybersecurity, and this means you will have to address now some additional questions here. So when you check, for example, the scope of work, you have to see, is cybersecurity part of the scope? Here, is it defined somewhere maybe as a goal of the project? Here, is it referenced that the standard needs to be included? Maybe it's influencing the quality of the project as well, influencing the activities, their responsibilities, and so on. I think very important typically is something like the base practice tool when you talk about the life cycle. The idea of Automotive SPICE is already that you have to address or map your life cycle to customer life cycle, but now as well you have to address a cybersecurity life cycle here. So one is what phases of cybersecurity development now been performed in your project. I think this is again something very important when we talk about responsibilities, because maybe you're not responsible for the complete life cycle, and this is where you really have to address what parts need to be mapped here to my development life cycle. Or feasibility, risk management process. So this is where you really see, do you have a risk management process? Do you use it here? Do you evaluate or activities? Does it include cybersecurity activities? And I think this is again an idea where you see it will be necessary that you really have additional knowledge about cybersecurity to perform an assessment here in future, because when you just see, I see a couple of activities somewhere in maybe a work breakdown structure or in a Gantt chart somewhere to see whether this definition of activities, whether this is really sufficient, appropriate to the project and to the project context. This means you have to have a kind of background knowledge on cybersecurity, that you have an idea of what are cybersecurity activities here. And this is where, I think this really will influence those interviews. Shortly, just the second part of the cybersecurity add-on before I come to an end here. The second part is about the rating guidelines. Maybe you know already the Blue Gold book, the ratings with the routes and recommendations, and it's pretty much the same here in the Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity, that you have as well routes and recommendations. For example, I pick one note, one rule here, the rule 1 for ACQ2. It's if the indicator base practice 1 is downrated due to some factors, then the corresponding indicator base practice 2 shall be downrated as well, so that there is a dependency between the base practices, and maybe even regarding the content that you need to check in such an interview. And so far, the Blue Gold book itself is not reworked, but in future releases, I'm pretty sure that those rules will be added for future to make sure we have specific rules and recommendations here for cybersecurity. And besides rules and recommendations, we as well have again rating consistency check. And this is where, for example, you have those diagrams here where you see the dependencies. So this is only a screenshot out of the yellow print that you, for example, know the base practice 2. Yeah, when you evaluate potential suppliers, this needs to be done against the criteria you defined in base practice 1. So if you have a gap somewhere in base practice 1, no criteria, it will influence the base practice 2, and this should help you during an assessment to make sure the rating at the end is consistent to each other. So this is only a short interpretation or idea of what rules, recommendations, and rating consistency is, and this is combined already in this model. Let's come to an end of my webinar, and maybe then there are some questions from your side as well. I try to bring it together because I think the question you're all interested in is how will this really influence our future assessment? I think one aspect I already mentioned there will be additional knowledge necessary in the future. If we look at how is it right now, you will see so far all the assessments are based on Automotive SPICE, but this is pretty obvious because the customers always prefer to already agreed requirements. You cannot change this basic requirement somewhere during development. Yeah, surprise. Tomorrow we will perform an assessment regarding cybersecurity. Yeah, so you stick to the agreed requirements. But pretty sure this will change. Yeah, this will change pretty soon. So for all the upcoming development projects, you know, a lot of customers already have their own cybersecurity requirements somewhere, and they expect already that they are implemented. And so this is now the idea. Let's stick to an existing standard here, and let's perform some assessments to see whether your processes are capable in order to be able to developed according to to cybersecurity. Although maybe this is something I should point out at this moment as well. It will not help us to ensure the cybersecurity in our project. It will just help us to check whether we have sufficient processes for cybersecurity, and to see whether this information, whether we have sufficient processes for this, to see whether this really helps. We will have a lot of pilot assessments already this year. I know a lot of companies that already try to discover how can we implement cybersecurity requirements here. Is there really an additional effort for us? How does this map to our work today? And this is why everybody, you all in your companies, you should prepare for Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity, because it's published, it's known, and you can already start to address this. And therefore, I try to pick 3 let's say recommendations for you at the end of this webinar. First of all, check your processes for compliance with these indicators. I think it's pretty easy. I just gave you some examples there. You have to read them, you have to interpret them, and you have to see whether it maps to your processes you defined already, whether you find a definition that corresponds here. Pretty sure not everything will be mappable, so you need to update your standard processes where necessary, where you define some improvement actions for your standard processes, and when you work on updates, seek for existing results and examples in your company, because projects are already performed, and there will be people on your company maybe that already have an idea of work products, that have an idea of methods used in cybersecurity. So try to reuse this when updating your processes. But at the end, if you need help with all 3 of this, I always know some good consultants that may support you with this work in cybersecurity. And this is why if you have any questions here, please come visit our website, ask us, contact us. I'm welcome to give you more detailed information here, or I would be very happy if we can see us together in the future in your projects and help you to have secure processes. So thank you very much for listening, and I would hand over back to Holger to collect the questions.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Timo, for this very comprehensive overview of Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity. Trying to ask all the questions we raised, and now it's up to you to ask questions. So there is already one question during the presentation, which is, let's say, not directly related only to cybersecurity. And the question is more, okay, we have something like functional safety in place, which is already a mature standard. Now we have cybersecurity, which is not, let's say, quite new, but we have for cybersecurity already Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity. Why isn't there something like functional safety Automotive SPICE or something like that? Do you have any opinion about that?
Yeah, yes, I have. So first of all, there is something for safety as well. Yeah, there is a safety add-on for the original SPICE, but I know it was not really established. I think it was part 10 of the old 5504, that should help you to implement safety processes. And there was a long discussion, and nobody really used this add-on for functional safety. And and there were a lot of discussions in the past whether Automotive SPICE assessors really should perform assessments to check functional safety processes, because, as you know, they are not experienced in functional safety most of the time. And this is why this discussion leads to no really an existing add-on for functional safety. But I can just tell you, when we sit together in our working group for, I think, one of the first time, we said, hey, we overslept the idea for functional safety, but let's do not the same mistake here for cybersecurity, because this is a chance really where we can save effort in the development projects, and where we already have an idea of combination of two important standards here for Automotive SPICE and cybersecurity. And I think you already know that when you perform assessments somewhere in your company, or you have assessors there, they struggle with asking questions for functional safety. Maybe there will be something in the future, but typically it's too late, because everybody thought about solutions on their own.
Okay, thank you, Timo. Another question is about relationship to TSEX and Automotive SPICE. Is there anything you here comment on?
Oh, sorry. No information right now, to be honest. Maybe this is something upcoming for the future, but no, sorry, I have to quit before I tell you some bullshit here. No idea, sorry.
Okay, then we have yes, another question: if Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity will be integrated into Automotive SPICE itself.
So
And when?
I can tell you maybe. So the idea is really to integrate this, because you see already there are only some additional processes here, and you already have to define the scope at the beginning of an assessment, and therefore you can just select whether the security processes are in scope or out of scope. So yes, it will be possible to integrate it. I checked the last idea or the last publications of what the new version of the Automotive SPICE 4.0 will include. To be honest, I'm not sure whether maybe last week during the conference they published any new ideas here. But so far, there was not really sufficient answer whether it really will be included, but I'm pretty sure it will be included in the future.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and then we have another question. How legally, regularly binding are the results of an Automotive SPICE cybersecurity assessment? And second question, are assessors qualified to give this recommendation? And I think there we are some question which we already thought this could arise, and maybe we could also bring into Bernhard here to give some answer for these, let's say, qualification things. Bernhard, hopefully you are online.
Yes, I am. Yeah. Hello, welcome.
Okay, so maybe short introduction. Bernhard Sechser, another managing director of Process Fellows and a member of the Index Advisory Board, and so he's also involved in the qualification of assessors, and maybe can give some short words about this question or answer to this question.
Yeah, that's really a very important topic. So currently, any certified assessor, certified according to the original Automotive SPICE assessment model, is allowed to perform assessments with any extension, let's say. So with hardware SPICE, mechanical SPICE, and also with cybersecurity SPICE. That's the current definition. But, and that's what Timo already mentioned, of course, it's really important and necessary that an assessor who wants to evaluate projects for cybersecurity topics has some kind of knowledge about that. And this was one reason why Intex is currently redefining the complete assessment training structure for the provisional and competent assessors in a way that additional trainings will be offered for the different extensions. So in our case here, for the cybersecurity model, there will be a new training for cybersecurity assessors be published. It will be a 3-day training where the people will not only be taught the details of the model itself. So as Timo mentioned, we have only 6 new processes and some add-ons to the existing processes. So typically 1 day would be enough. But we need to transfer more detailed knowledge about the cybersecurity topic itself to the assessors, in order to have a chance that they at least can evaluate these things from a process point of view. Of course, this will not be a technical training. So assessors without any background knowledge will not know if the cybersecurity methods are the right ones. They only will ask, do the project think about these methods? Like in real assessments where we just evaluate that the projects have good processes in place, but we typically are not able to evaluate each detail of such a project or software or system.
I think this is why I would like to add something, because I think this question is very, very important. You ask what is the consequence out of this, and is it binding maybe? So I can when I perform an assessment according to Automotive SPICE for cybersecurity, I can just tell you how capable your security processes are. So I can just give you the capability of those processes. I cannot tell you whether you ensure cybersecurity for the product you're developing. And this is very important. Therefore, other methods will be needed comparable to what functional safety assessments. Yeah. And this is where cybersecurity assessments will be necessary in addition.
I think we can directly focus on or go to the next question, which is, does it mean that assessors can have the possibility to stop a project?
To stop a project, so assessors will stop the project for a couple of days. During performing an assessment, nobody is able to work because he has a lot of silly questions. But you see, the assessor can just tell you the capability of your processes. I can not say, hey, this project is very risky, and this is why it's not binding. You can still decide on your own whether you want to release this product or not. But please remember, we talk about process quality, what we check here, and there are a lot of results. A lot of examples where you really see process capability, the process quality has a major influence on product quality. And this is why when an assessor will tell you, hey, please be careful, you have a problem over here, I see a higher risk regarding the product, it's still up to you, but you better check twice before you release.
Yeah, at the end means assessor does not block, but it identifies the risks. I think this is our job as an assessor here. Okay, so the next question is about scope, VDA scope. So well-known former scope, now VDA scope. Will there a redefinition of this VDA scope, including cybersecurity? Are there already discussion about that? Do you know about that, Timo?
So I know it is always a huge discussion because yeah, VDA scope, please remember, it's not binding. Yeah, it's not mandatory to have exactly this scope. I perform a lot of assessments already now where the scope is extended, where other processes are included because they are very important. Yeah, talking about requirement elicitation or risk management. There is still an ongoing discussion on this because you already saw cybersecurity requirement elicitation. How can you assess this process when you do not have requirements elicitation in scope? So yes, there are a lot of discussions. So far, there's nothing that I know that is published, but I would like to ask Bernard whether maybe he's got already some information from the conference, whether they already gave an idea of what will be maybe major changes in the new version.
Yeah. So there will be some changes, yes. So I don't know if the currently known VDA scope will be changed, but the current version, what Timo presented, is just an intermediate version. So typically, these kind of working groups who develop those standards need 3, 4, 5 years to work on a standard. But there was a big requirement from a legal point of view to publish a first version of cybersecurity, of the cybersecurity assessment model very quickly, because with mid of next year, all the companies have to prove that they have good processes to ensure cybersecurity management in general. And the development is one part of the overall organizational processes, of course. And the cybersecurity management audit will be on the same level as a ISO 9001 audit or IATF 16494 audit. Yeah, so means on an organization level, you have to fulfill it in order to prove that you have, that you are able to do good work according to a quality management system. And on the development level, I'm pretty sure it will be a requirement to perform these processes that are defined here in the cybersecurity extension of SPICE. So from my point of view, and that's also the information I got from the VDA working group, is that in the next version of Automotive SPICE, it's planned to integrate the cybersecurity extension and to define it as mandatory processes in assessments. Now, that's the current statement, but it will need 1 or 2 further years until we will see an Automotive SPICE 4.0 or something like
that. Maybe, Bernard, did you see the question in the chat? I think you already talked a little bit about this cybersecurity training. Is there anything you can add to this question we see here?
Yes. Okay. Here the question from Diana is if there is a plan to have additional trainings, extensions. Yes, that's exactly the idea. There will be. I think it's we have too less time to search for a slide, but I can briefly describe it. So we will have, let's say, 3 levels of training in the future. So besides the typical provisional and competent assessor training, there will be so-called expert trainings. The first one will be for Automotive SPICE itself. So current situation is that there will be a training for Automotive SPICE 3.1, an expert training, and there will be another expert training for the cybersecurity model. And it doesn't matter if you perform your trainings according to the new model or according to the old one. So if you as an existing assessor, or even if you are just interested in it, want to visit such a training, it's possible. It will be offered from 2022 on, from next year on, to the existing assessors in order to improve the skills, or for the project people in order to know what, from SPICE point of view, is expected for fulfilling these requirements.
So that's not only for new assessor, it's also for the existing assessors.
Yes.
The same approach.
Yes.
Okay, so At the moment, I do not see new questions in the chat. Is there anyone still open question? So I think we have last question maybe before we really stop. Yeah, Timo, you talked about pilot assessments. Who will request those pilot assessments? Is it more the car manufacturers or the suppliers themselves? So who will do that?
Oh, the question is pretty close to what Bernhard just told you, that there will, in the future, there will be the requirement to ensure that those processes are established within the company, comparable to audits in 9001 or 6949. So this means nearly everybody will need those kind of assessments, because maybe not to really see the performance first of all, whether you really are capable already, but to identify so what are maybe gaps in order to make sure we establish those processes here as well. And the best way to prepare for really a kind of process check from according to those audits, it would good to have internal check first of all to see whether my pros are already in place here, whether you performed really those recommendations I showed you. Can we address those indicators? Do we need some process updates here? And this is why everybody typically will need those pilot assessments to check the capability in their own company here.
Okay, thank you very much, Timo. I think now we should close our session, and I would add that I think the car manufacturers will very soon also request it from their suppliers, as you know it from Automotive SPICE. Thank you very much, Timo, again for your presentation and also answering the question. Also, Bernhard, for jumping in for some special questions. Thank you for all who joined our webinar. Hopefully you get some useful information. You can download, like I said, the PDF on our website. We would be happy if you register for our newsletter or join any of our future webinars and trainings. And thank you again very much, and goodbye. Have a nice evening, nice day, wherever you are. Bye-bye.